Hi everyone, and welcome back to the weekly MMA Cycles Market Update. Today is Wednesday, October 8th, 2025. I'm Gianni Di Poce, your host, and we are seeing stocks hang out around their all-time highs. The Nasdaq 100 futures hit an all-time high earlier today, but we are going into another period of potent geocosmic activity. So let's see how markets are shaping up and talk about what these upcoming geocosmics are. It actually starts off on Saturday with an opposition between Venus and Saturn, which is pretty important. One of the things we like to talk about is to look to buy any market falling into a low during a hard aspect between Venus and Saturn. But right now, we're not falling into a low. We're hanging out near the highs. The Dow did make a new all-time high last week, not yet this week, but you do have the Nasdaq at new all-time highs. And if only the geocosmics ended with Venus opposite Saturn. In fact, they continue, and I would argue they get even more potent because you have Venus ingressing into the sign of Libra on Monday the 13th and forming an opposition to Neptune that same day. But then you're also going to have Pluto going stationary direct that same day as well. So a pretty important time. And then the next day on the 14th, you're going to have a nice trine aspect between Venus and Uranus. So that's pretty notable as well, especially when we consider what's going on in the tech sector. Doing very well right now. You can take a look at XLK, the tech sector ETF, hanging out at the all-time highs, as well as semiconductors, which we all know are very important to the entire trade and the theme of artificial intelligence. So that's all looking pretty strong at the moment. And if you just heard what I said regarding Venus going into the sign of Libra, I do want to touch on that within the context of crypto, not so much Bitcoin, but Ethereum, which I'll get to in just a moment. Bitcoin did make a new all-time high earlier this week in alignment with our expectations. We are pretty much seeing our game plan play out in Bitcoin when it comes to time and price. The trend is still up. The new all-time high confirms that. But when we are looking at Ethereum here, this is what really gets exciting for me because we have Venus going into Libra on Monday, and studies have shown that the historical probability or the historical frequencies of a 20% or greater move occurring with Venus in Libra are rather high, specifically for Ethereum. And then when you look at Bitcoin, it's high with Venus in Taurus. So Venus in her ruling signs seems to be a pretty good time for cryptocurrencies. Not to mention you have the trine aspect with Venus and Uranus coming next week. Uranus, notorious for breaks of support and resistance, also has a tilt towards technology. We're looking at a potential breakout here in the price of Ethereum to new all-time highs. So we'd be keeping a very close watch on that. It looks very, very good. Let's go ahead and shift gears a little bit and take a look at gold, which continues to defy the laws of gravity. We do have Mars and Scorpio right now, raised, very well-known study in that regard. But we continue to climb the new highs. This is late cycle behavior. Silver hit a new decade plus high. We're about $1 away on silver from hitting a new all-time high. So I wouldn't be surprised if silver hit a new all-time high and then, began a little bit of a pullback. But overall, the trend is still very much up with Jupiter in Cancer, Neptune in Aries. Then next year, Jupiter goes into Leo. I don't think the bearish trend in precious metals is going to start anytime soon. In fact, I would look for the bullish trend to continue in precious metals. It's looking very, very strong. Now, one of the other major developments that we're monitoring very closely is the sharp rebound in the US dollar. I'm taking a look at the Japanese yen here, the dollar against the yen. Japan had new elections this past weekend. A prime minister along the policy lines of Shinzo Abe was elected. So Abenomics, very popular for devaluing the Japanese yen over the last decade or so. And so we're seeing that play out again. Strong, almost parabolic move in the dollar against the yen, but we're also seeing the dollar shape up nicely against the euro. So I'd be paying very close attention to these markets coming into these Venus signatures in the coming days because the dollar is going up now. The trend in the dollar has been down this year, as evidenced by the appreciation in the euro and the yen. So we need to be alert for either an acceleration of this reversal or another abrupt reversal in currencies. We'll be keeping a close watch on that here as well. Let's take a look at bonds. Bonds are up, but well off the highs of the day. We do have the Fed that's set to cut interest rates on the 29th at the end of the month. But right now, we're not getting a lot of government data because the government is still shut down. But bonds are kind of shaking that off at the moment. It's still our preference to see interest rates go down into next year. Then you take a look at crude oil, a little bit of a bounce here today, but still looking rather tepid and weak. Now with Saturn back in the sign of Pisces, we are on the lookout for a big low to occur. But keep in mind that, with Saturn in close orb of a conjunction to Neptune, it may take until those two very important planets separate from one another before we find crude oil completing a rather important bottom. So that's kind of what's going on, big picture here in financial markets. We are going to be having the third class of the Merriman Market Timing Academy this Saturday. In fact, I will be stepping in to teach this weekend. I'm going to be joined by Director Vipka Held, who's been doing an excellent job in the first two classes. Of course, Ray is present, offering his excellent color commentary, but was asked to teach the class this weekend. So if you want to join us, it's still not too late. There are only like 2 spots left in this program. You can send us an email at customerservice@MMAcycles.com. But we've had quite a strong attendance and application for the program, and it's been going very smoothly so far. And then early next week, we will have the monthly release of the monthly cycles report, where we will update our readers on our outlook on stocks, bonds, commodities, currencies, and more. So you don't want to miss that, especially in this potent period of geocosmic activity that we're going into. That's all for now, everyone. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. We're going to have some great updates heading your way in the coming weeks. That's all for now. Take care, everyone.